So welcome back everybody, this is Paul again with another in my series about esoteric teachings, esoteric healing and symbolism and so on. Hope you all like my t-shirt out here. I got this in Thailand. I thought it was kind of appropriate for my work and a lot of others out there. So today I want to talk about this really interesting subject that a lot of people are getting into. It's very popular these days about other beings and space beings and under the ground, or under the earth beings and all kinds of ideas like that. And I've been studying esoteric subjects for a long time, and long before we got into the space age, I read about various Hindu teachings about beings from other parts of the solar system or wherever. And we back then when I was young, we didn't even have like all the space rockets and so on that we have now and the computers. But as I've gone along, I've learned about my own experience through meditation, my own being, and I want to talk a little bit about it because, once again, this is a whole teaching about wholeness and oneness, because this is the ancient teaching that's come down to about cosmic oneness. We're all basically, every atom really is a part of a brotherhood, you might say, and if you want to have bliss and joy and you want to be fulfilled, you got to just follow along with the cosmos, because you're only put here for a short time. What are you going to do, resist the cosmos? So a lot of people like me are curious and want to know all kinds of stuff about different beings and how cosmology and esoteric hierarchies and this and that sort of thing, and gods and goddesses. So I made this little chart here, a little bit about gods, animals, and the so-called heavenly man concept. I'll get into that later. Why do the ancient people, why did all the ancient teachings talk about various kinds of animals, and they give these gods personifications and personalities? It's very, very bizarre actually, and I want to address that a little bit today because it's very, very complicated. First of all, over the thousands of years, it's very natural for various teachings to get kind of modified and mythified, you might say, and they're sort of roughly true about certain concepts, you might say, but maybe it's taken too literally and so on. So then there's also the fact that we know for sure that, we know there's millions and millions of different kinds of beings just on this earth. All kinds of creatures, and many of them are extremely bizarre. So, and we know that within even a human population, we have people with various kinds of growths and misfortunes of that kind, and Siamese twins and so on. So we know that consciousness, basically, it's very easy to come to a given understanding that we all agree on, that consciousness has just infinite numbers of ways of expressing itself. It's just everywhere. Different kinds of things. There's some kind of plants that if you touch it, it'll close the leaf up. It's pretty amazing. And yes, there's a technology involved. There's a science. This is the esoteric science, is understanding, first of all, the ultimate oneness of all being, how connected we are, what brings us in common. Because modern science, a lot of times, is just like, okay, we want to dissect everything. We want to dissect everything down to the last little bone or the last little whatever chemical. But again, if you look at science in the point of wholeness, okay, for example, why is it possible for some of these animals with tiny little brains to do such incredibly complex tasks? It's just they got a brain about the size of a peanut. But you see them doing all kinds of stuff, like birds talking and stuff. So the mechanism for consciousness to exhibit itself in this physical reality that we live in is just immense. It's just unlimited. So that we take that for granted. Okay, so now let's explore, well, how the ancient teachings say, look, there's the body, there's the form, and then there's the consciousness. The consciousness is independent of the form, and it inhabits the forms. From the universe, from the galaxy to the solar system, we're talking about a stream of energy of various different subtleties. It's just beyond our comprehension. The energies that flow into the sun and cause it to do what it does. It's a vast, vast system, and the reason that these ancient teachers, there's a good reason why they made them into heavenly men or animals, or they gave them personalities, because too often in modern science and our investigation we differentiate. Everything's over there. My consciousness is over here and that's over there, and everything is just like far distant and it's chopped up. It's not looking at the whole oneness of everything. So when we start looking that way, we come into a whole different kind of perception. We say, okay, well, when people get taught something about an animal by God, okay, for example, they might put their own, they're now putting their own consciousness into the creation, which they already are. But in other words, by being involved with deities, or just say, call it a kind of love. Let's say, for example, in many parts of the world, people think you're really strange to hug a dog. I mean, they might eat those things, So, and there are people who kiss their horse. So there are strange concepts about relating to other animals, other creatures, in a loving way, and it's strange. And we know that just on the history of this planet right now, there's been many, many kinds of creatures that never went out of business, so to speak. They just got extinct. We might even go that route. There's even been hominids that are very different from us that have gone extinct. So we forget that, again, there's unlimited forms of ways that consciousness, which is inherent in the universe, in the oneness, to exude itself out into the creation. It just comes out, the power and the energy and the vibration of the infinite that's out there, whatever we just call it, whatever, because it's something that keeps us alive here. There's space and all kinds of frequencies that allow us to be here. So why can't energy and consciousness come in a big form, or come in a combination of human animal form? It seems really bizarre, but genetic engineering could do all kinds of strange things just with our human body. I mean, so who knows what has happened in the past? But really, the main purpose of all this is some kind of a metaphor, because if you can identify temporarily with an animal or a creature or some kind of heavenly being, you might say, or some being that's bigger than us or has different kinds of perception than us, then you can start to expand your own awareness. Just like imagination helps take us somewhere. We can admire certain kinds of people or something, and then we can imitate them. And there's people who they love their dog so much they, have a nice bed for them in the house, and they so being in relationship to other animals and creatures is not abnormal. It's a part of the oneness. It's a part of the brotherhood. So it maybe seems strange to us. You understand? There's people who admire the monkey. They admire the cow. Just because there are people who, if you live with a cow, people provide their food and they work for, and then they get love for their cow. It's hard for people in the West to understand that, but they don't understand why we love our dogs so much. You see, what does the dog do? The dog takes from us. The cow gives to us. See, so again, there are types of energy expression and so on, and it gives us some kind of a metaphor for understanding. Now, you're getting some really interesting names here. There's Hanuman, was very famous, and Ganesh, and the Garuda from the Indian tradition. I covered about consciousness is inherent in the cosmos. Now, a thing that people don't often realize, that in India, when they make a god statue, it has to have these exact proportions. Now, if you look at this one, for example, this is the Ganesh, okay? Now look at the position. There's many different statues of Ganesh, but he's got, an elephant is heavy, and the elephant is dancing, and there's a whole lot of symbols. The elephant has huge ears to hear the music of the cosmos. There's just so many elements in this particular symbol. Now, the statues in India are supposed to be built, I think there's only a few places in India where they build these statues. And they have to have the exact proportions. There's ratios, exactly how they're positioned in their hand, what they're holding in their hand, the foot, the way the foot is, the way the hands are, everything. And a lot of people don't understand that. So what they're saying is they're trying to say that it embodies a certain type of energy and movement. And, of course, the elephant has a tremendous memory and it remembers, and it's just a whole bunch of symbolism. It also makes great stories that are easy to remember and go down for thousands and thousands of years. So now in the modern era, we've gotten a lot of confused and mixed up with the different statues that we see from the past and wonder how much accurate they are to what's real, and are there real beings that look like that? Was there really a Hanuman with a head like that? Or, there's a lot of symbolism in there that is sort of hard to prove whether something is based on reality or not. But what's real? Basically, there is a real energy of certain types of energy, and a human being can understand those kinds of gods and goddesses by trying to relate to that type of awareness, so that it reflects back on them and they realize that part of their own awareness. If you understand, it's like a mirror. It's just a helpful tool. Not everybody needs to worship a goddess. Some people find some particular fulfillment in it because of their own personal realizations on the activity that they're doing. So, again, start from the oneness, gods, animals. Now, I went to incarnations and avatars. Now, this is a really important thing, because now we're getting into the whole discussion of what's out there. Are there other kind of beings and how they appear, and the statues and pictures from Egypt, are they really bird people, and so on. Now, it's a really, really complicated thing. I don't know how to answer all those questions except for my own basic experience and understanding is that, first of all, our body itself is just a projection. If you call about what's real about it, from a snail's point of view, we could be running along and the snail won't see us because the snail's perception is just sort of not there. I mean, it perceives things really, really slowly, like trees or rocks. They don't move. And then on the other hand, you have beings like flies, and they have all these eyes, and they can sense a slight movement across a room, and they're out of there. So it's helpful for us to grasp that our own existence isn't necessarily real in a sense. You understand? So that if we say, well, okay, ghosts and that thing, and those are very, very low-level things. I won't get into that. But I'm talking about if consciousness, while we're alive, we link it and synchronize with the essence of consciousness. If there's billions of years of evolution of this cosmos, and every kind of being has ever been produced, then maybe there are kinds of beings like the ancients talked about the planets being beings, or the earth is a being, or at various levels they have an involution and evolution. Like, say, the planet might take an initiation. The planetary initiation might be on such a cosmic level that, let's say, it receives a particular huge dose of energy from the sun, for example. And so that represents to that particular planet that in that particular time a huge inflow, like our aurora borealis brings in energy from the sun. So let's say, for example, it could happen where the sun makes one huge blast, and then every planet in the whole solar system goes, whoa. Now, on some cosmic level, it's an upgrade. It's a big, big change, and everything's going to, blissful from the point of view of the planet or the solar system, because what is bliss for the solar system is to be in harmony, and more harmony and more integration with this greater cosmos. So by putting our own consciousness, okay, imagine yourself being a sun, for example, and in the center of our own being, we are linked to a planet in the cosmos and the galaxy. So all of these metaphors are to help us gather our own experience, not so that we get attached to worshiping some kind of a creature or whatever, but to let that energy and that concept help us grasp who we really are. Because I met someone one time and I said, well, did you know that you're a goddess? Do you realize that? Now, I was joking, of course, but it's really, really true that a lot of people, there's on this time on earth, there's millions and millions and millions and millions of really people come here to serve, to help you get expansion of your own awareness and knowledge of all the different kinds. This is a fantastic time to be on the earth if you are conscious. So there are a lot of beings here who've forgotten who they really are. I really believe that. We get caught up in different things and we forget our true nature. So sometimes all it takes is just brushing yourself up and look, hey, did you realize, like you're a swan, not a duck, or something like that. You're more than you realize. So that's my purpose here, to try to convey that to everybody, because all these deities and gods and so everything external can be helpful to us depending how we use it and how we accept it and how we understand it. On the other hand, ultimately the consciousness, the subplane of everything in this cosmos is just very simple, and it resides within us. And there's great teachers who said, look, okay, let's start with the simple, go inside, start feeling that, get connected, and then you can start exploring a lot of these other kinds of things. Now, again, I really believe that all kinds of beings can come in a human body, and they have. I mean, we know that it's just a shell, it's a body, okay? Anyone can get in a particular boat and ride that boat and get out of the boat. So